Hey, what's up guys? Joker here. Today we are going to take a look at the GTX 1080 again, but we're going to be testing it at 1080p. And this isn't really a video that I had planned to do, but after the review with 1440p and 4K, a lot of people had asked in the comments below, how is it running at 1080p? And I was just like, my thought going into the review was like, well, it's complete overkill for a 1080p, so I don't even know why I would bother testing at that. And I didn't see many other outlets, testing at that resolution as well. So I was like, okay. But a lot of people asked, how does it run in games at 1080p? So I'll get this piece of lint off of here. So I figured I would go ahead and test it again at 1080p just to see what we can get. Because there are some people out there that might be trying to do like 144 hertz crazy setups, and they're just like, okay, I don't care if it's overkill because I'm doing 144 hertz and I need it locked at 140. Another piece of lint. Even though you don't really, they want it locked at 144 hertz, even though you don't really need it locked at like 144 hertz, in my opinion, because I've been running 144 hertz for years now, and I was always just pretty happy to be getting anything like north of 60 FPS, but hey, some people out there are nutters and they just want the frame rates locked at 144 all the time, and I'm not one to tell them that they're wrong for that, so we're going to go through the numbers here on the GTX 1080 to see just how overkill it is, and I have included the numbers from 1440p and 4K as well in the 1080 just for basis of comparison, and we threw in some DirectX 12 benchmarks now as well with Hitman, Gears of War, Ashes of the Singularity, because I've got, my system upgraded here. I've got Windows 10 installed, so now I can test on DX12 titles, so I wanted to throw some of those in there for you guys, and as we get more DX12 titles, I'll definitely be testing those, and I might do a dedicated video on DX12 as well if I can figure out the right concept for that. As far as the test system is concerned that we used here today, I am running on the water-cooled i7 6800K overclocked at 4.3 gigahertz, along with 32 gigabytes of DDR4 memory, which is at 2666 megahertz. And then the GPU, you guys know the GTX 1080, it's the Founders Edition. I've got that on a custom fan curve, and it is overclocked. I've got 200 megahertz on the core, and an additional 300 megahertz on the memory there. And that's all on driver version 368.39. So I believe that's all of the pertinent information that you guys need for this. Oh, the game's also running, once again, the same as the last benchmarks we did, the complete highest settings available in the game with no GameWorks and no anti-aliasing. Now, I know some people are like, oh, it's 1080p, you should be using anti-aliasing, Joker. I know, bro. But all of our other games were tested without anti-aliasing and no GameWorks. So this is really just for the whole point of consistency. Because otherwise, if I tested it at 1080 with anti-aliasing and I didn't test it 4K with no anti-aliasing, they'd be like, why are these numbers so close? Well, it's because this one's getting caned by 8 times MSAA. So that's why I test it without anti-aliasing and GameWorks. It's just for consistency across the board. You can kind of do the math that you can throw on some anti-aliasing here if you're actually thinking about picking up a 1080 for 1080p. So we're going to go roll through it now on the rockin' benchmarks. So let's do it. right, so you guys got to look at the numbers there at 1080p with the GTX 1080 Founders Edition. One number that really stood out to me right away was Grand Theft Auto 5. That was running at 87 FPS, which was 2 FPS lower than at 1440p. So that's really, I'm contributing that to a CPU bottleneck given the history of that particular title right there. Ashes of the Singularity is another one that didn't really get up to like 100 FPS. It was 58 FPS there, but that was with the completely crazy settings. Everything just whacked all the way up to the max besides anti-aliasing. Like I said before, we ran through the benchmarks, but everything else maxed up in there, like 16 million shader samples, I think is the option. Yeah, it's a lot of shading. So the rest of the games though were like 100 FPS and up. The Division had 98, but that's close. That's pretty much like 100, man. You're cruising around over 100 FPS the majority of the time in that game. Other games, over 100 FPS. So if you were thinking about it for like 144 hertz, I mean, yeah, it can run games really, really well, but it's still overkill because you could go out there, you could get yourself a GTX 1070 for like half the price almost, or like a used 980 Ti or something like that, and you're just gonna still kill it at GTX 1080p on the titles that you're probably going to play here, for many, many years to come. So GTX 1080, overkill for 1080p. I hope that this kind of, shows that to people so you know that just how overkill it is if you're thinking about going out and spending $700 on a GPU in 2016 just for 1080p. So maybe if you're thinking about upgrading, pretty soon, like if, okay, I'm getting it for, 1080, 144 hertz now, but I'm going to upgrade to 1440, 144 hertz later on down the road, then okay. I could definitely see that if you just want to future-proof yourself there at the graphics card. No harm done. Because 1440p is like really like the perfect sweet spot for this card, especially if you've got a 144 hertz display to take advantage of it. Because you saw there in almost all the games we tested, it was still over 60 frames at 1440. Only about a 33% loss in performance there, so still able to maintain a solid 60 frames plus there. So I'm going to go ahead and get on out of here, guys. Please let me know your thoughts down in the comments below on the overkill factor of the GTX 1080. Yeah. All right. I will catch you guys next time. Ta-ra. Sad.